In 2024 alone, Lifeway research found that 4,000 Protestant churches closed, while only 3,800 new ones opened. Experts warn that this is not a passing trend, but a seismic shift driven by declining attendance, aging congregations, rising maintenance costs, clergy shortages, and a growing population of Americans who identify as religiously unaffiliated. What follows is an examination of 6 cities where the shuttering of sacred spaces has reached alarming levels, threatening not just religious life, but the very fabric of community. Across the United States, an unprecedented wave of church closures is reshaping the spiritual and social landscape of American cities. The National Council of Churches estimates that as many as 100,000 houses of worship could shut their doors in the coming years, representing roughly 1/4 of all churches currently in operation. Number 6. Philadelphia. The city of brotherly love has watched its Catholic parish landscape shrink steadily over the past decade and a half. Beginning with a pastoral planning initiative launched in 2011, the Archdiocese of Philadelphia has carried out multiple rounds of mergers and closures that have reduced the total number of parishes from 266 in 2010 to around 219. The mergers have swept through working-class urban neighborhoods and older suburbs alike, consolidating congregations that were often less than a mile apart from one another. Factors driving the closures include dramatic shifts in Catholic population as families relocated to outer suburbs, declining mass attendance, a shortage of priests to staff parishes, and the rising cost of maintaining aging church buildings. The closures have disproportionately affected communities that were already struggling economically. Many of the shuttered churches sat in neighborhoods with high concentrations of poverty and people of color. Researchers at Georgetown University and the University of Notre Dame have documented how parishes most vulnerable to closure tend to serve marginalized populations. Former church buildings in Philadelphia have been repurposed into everything from high-end restaurants to wellness studios, a transformation that has left many longtime parishioners feeling abandoned. For these communities, the loss of a parish church meant losing not only a place of worship, but a neighborhood anchor that provided food assistance, after-school programs, and a gathering space for residents who had nowhere else to turn. Number 5. Detroit. The Motor City's relationship with its churches mirrors the broader story of urban decline and reinvention that has defined Detroit for decades. Many of the city's grandest Catholic churches were constructed during the early and mid-20th century boom years, when the automobile industry drew waves of workers and their families to Southeast Michigan. At its peak, the Archdiocese of Detroit served more than 1.5 million Catholics. Today, that number has fallen to approximately 900,000, with fewer than 150,000 attending Mass on a regular basis. In November of 2025, Archbishop Edward Weisenberger announced a sweeping 2-year restructuring initiative that will affect every single parish in the 6-county archdiocese. The archdiocese has acknowledged openly that it cannot maintain its roughly 200 parish buildings. 67% of those parishes see fewer than 600 Mass participants each week. The number of active priests is projected to decline by 40% over the next decade, falling from 224 to just 134 by 2034. Under the restructuring plan, parishes will be organized into groupings called pastorates, each led by a single pastor and his team. Church buildings will close, parishes will merge, and entire communities will be uprooted. The Archdiocese has already experienced several high-profile closures. including a historic church in Detroit, known for its mural of a Black Jesus, which held its final Mass in October of 2025. For Detroit's Black Catholic population, the restructuring raises painful questions about whose sacred spaces will survive and whose will be sacrificed. Number 4. Chicago. The Archdiocese of Chicago launched its massive restructuring initiative known as Renew My Church in 2016 under Cardinal Blase Cupich. At the time, the Archdiocese had approximately 350 parishes, already down from nearly 450 in the mid-1980s. Since the program began, dozens of parishes have been merged, closed, or consolidated in wave after wave of announcements. By 2025, the number of parishes had fallen below 300. In February of that year alone, the Archdiocese announced 12 new parish groupings involving nearly 24 mergers, most of them affecting congregations in Chicago proper and nearby suburbs. The closures have drawn criticism from preservation groups and community advocates who argue that the Archdiocese has disproportionately shuttered parishes that serve communities of color and low-income neighborhoods. Preservation Chicago has twice placed the city's threatened Catholic churches on its most endangered list, warning that the rush to close and sell these architecturally magnificent structures amounts to a form of cultural demolition. Many closed churches have been left vacant rather than properly maintained, leading to further deterioration. The asking prices for these properties have often been prohibitively high, preventing other congregations or community organizations from acquiring them. Meanwhile, the Archdiocese has faced its own financial pressures, including more than $140 million in clergy abuse settlements. Average weekly Mass attendance across the Archdiocese dropped 26% between 1995 and 2015, and the decline has only accelerated in the years since. Number 3. Buffalo. The Diocese of Buffalo's Road to Renewal program represents one of the most dramatic church consolidation efforts in recent American history. In September of 2024, Bishop Michael Fisher announced the final plan to close 78 worship sites across 8 counties in western New York, reducing the total number of parishes by 51% from 160 to just 79. An additional 39 locations were designated as secondary worship sites, and 13 parishes were placed on a watch list for potential future closures. The announcement came 4 years after the diocese filed for bankruptcy to settle approximately 900 claims of childhood sexual abuse at a cost of at least $100 million. The human toll of the closures has been devastating. Parishioners who had attended the same church for decades were suddenly told their spiritual home would cease to exist. 104-year-old parishes that had survived 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and a global pandemic could not survive the combination of dwindling attendance, mounting debt, and a catastrophic abuse scandal. In neighborhoods across Buffalo and the surrounding region, the closures have severed generations-old ties between families and their faith communities. Advocacy groups like Save Our Churches have retained canon law attorneys to challenge the closures, arguing that some vibrant, financially solvent parishes have been shut down, while weaker ones remain open. For many Western New Yorkers, the sight of a beloved church locked and emptied is a wound that no amount of institutional reasoning can heal. Number 2. Baltimore. Baltimore holds a unique place in American Catholic history as home to the nation's oldest archdiocese, established in 1789. That history made the announcement in April of 2024, all the more devastating. Under its Seek the City to Come initiative, the Archdiocese of Baltimore revealed plans to consolidate 61 parishes in the city and surrounding suburbs into just 21, eventually settling on 30 worship sites. The closures would affect some of the most historically significant churches in the country, including St. Vincent de Paul, the city's oldest Catholic church in continuous operation, dedicated in 1841. The Archdiocese pointed to decades of population loss, decaying attendance, and crumbling infrastructure as the primary drivers. Baltimore's population had shrunk from nearly 1 million residents in the 1950s to fewer than 570,000. The 61 churches slated for consolidation collectively served just 1% of the Archdiocese's total Catholic population. But the closures carried a deeply painful racial dimension. 10 of the churches marked for closure were predominantly Black congregations, and a full third of the shuttered parishes served African American communities. Critics accused the Archdiocese of abandoning the very communities that needed the church's presence most. Compounding the anguish was the Archdiocese's filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the fall of 2023, prompted by the anticipated costs of compensating hundreds of survivors of clergy sexual abuse. Church officials insisted the consolidation plan was not related to the bankruptcy, but for parishioners watching their churches close, while the institution grappled with scandal and debt. The distinction rang hollow. Number 1. Nationwide crisis with no end in sight. While 6 cities have been highlighted here, the church closure crisis extends far beyond any single metropolitan area. Dioceses in New York, Boston, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Cleveland, St. Louis, New Orleans, and dozens of other cities have all undergone similar waves of consolidation and closure. The former president of Lifeway Christian Resources projected that 15,000 churches would close in 2025 alone, a figure he described as the final wave of fallout from the pandemic that had pushed already struggling congregations past the breaking point. Another 15,000 churches were expected to shift from full-time to part-time pastors, meaning that roughly 1 out of every 12 existing churches in America would undergo a dramatic change in a single year. The consequences reach far beyond Sunday services. In rural communities, churches often serve as the primary providers of food assistance, disaster relief, childcare, and social support. In urban neighborhoods, they function as community anchors, gathering spaces, and sources of stability in areas marked by poverty and displacement. When a church closes, the ripple effects touch every aspect of community life. Yet, amid the loss, there are also signs of transformation. Across the country, former church buildings are being repurposed as affordable housing developments, community centers, food hubs, and civic gathering spaces. States from Washington to Maryland have passed legislation making it easier for faith organizations to develop their properties for community benefit. Whether these new uses can truly replace what has been lost remains an open question. But for the millions of Americans watching their churches close, the answer will shape the future of community life in this country for generations to come.